Star Trek Deep Space Nine wasn't just a show about aliens, politics, or war. It was a pressure cooker that tested everyone who stepped inside it. Behind all that gritty realism, the cast fought their own battles. Contracts broke, bodies burned out, spirits got pushed to the edge. These are the Deep Space Nine actors who quit, almost quit, or were forced out. Tell me in the comments which story surprised you the most, and if I missed anything. And, while you're at it, subscribe for more untold Star Trek stories. Let's start with the bartender who saw everything. He wasn't a captain, or a soldier, or even a believer. He was just trying to make a living on a station full of people pretending not to be as greedy as he was. Quark, or Quark, depending on who's saying it, was the heartbeat of Deep Space Nine. The laugh in the middle of the darkness. The con man with a conscience. Fans adored him because he was funny, until he wasn't. When Quark dropped the mask, he revealed what the show was really about: survival, dignity, and the messy middle ground between profit and principle. But for the man behind the lobes, it almost didn't last. In a 1998 Cinefantastique interview, Armin Shimerman admitted that Season 1's portrayal of the Ferengi nearly drove him out. "I didn't sign up to play a clown," he said. He went to the producers and demanded something better, something honest, and they listened. Over time, episodes like The House of Quark and Body Parts turned the comic relief into the show's moral compass. Shimerman stayed 7 seasons, and his fight for dignity didn't just reshape Quark, it gave the entire series a conscience. Now let's move on to the woman who carried an entire planet's grief on her shoulders, until she almost couldn't handle it anymore. Major Kira Nerys wasn't born to serve Starfleet. She was a resistance fighter, forged in occupation and loss, a soldier who never asked for peace, but learned how to live in it. She challenged prophets, politicians, and anyone who tried to tame her fire. Fans loved her because she wasn't polished. She was raw, emotional, and real. Off-screen, though, Nana Visitor was fighting her own kind of war. In a 2002 Star Trek communicator interview, she revealed that Season 5 nearly broke her. She'd just given birth to her son Django and returned to 12-hour shooting days only weeks later. "I was back too soon," she said. "I was exhausted and overwhelmed." The writers folded her pregnancy into Kira's story, carrying Miles and Keiko O'Brien's baby. But the production grind didn't ease up. Visitor finally told producers she couldn't keep that pace and thought seriously about leaving the show for good. They listened. Her schedule was lightened, her storylines more focused. And by Season 6, Kira's strength, that mix of faith, fury, and endurance, became a reflection of her own. Visitor later said, "That was the hardest thing I've ever done. But Kira saved me." Next up, we have Dr. Julian Bashir, who was played by Alexander Siddig, who, interestingly enough, is the nephew of legendary actor Malcolm McDowell. Bashir arrived on Deep Space Nine believing medicine and optimism could fix anything. He was the station's golden boy, brilliant, ambitious, a little too proud, and completely unprepared for how messy the frontier really was. Fans loved watching that confidence evolve into something deeper, a doctor forced to confront not just disease and war, but himself. Then came the twist. Season 5's Dr. Bashir, I presume, revealed he wasn't just gifted. He was genetically enhanced, the result of illegal experiments his parents had kept secret. Well, that was also a secret to Siddig, who wasn't warned in advance. In a 2011 StarTrek.com interview, he admitted, "I was really angry. I thought they'd destroyed him." He stopped speaking to the writers for 2 weeks and seriously considered quitting. For him, the revelation felt like a betrayal, rewriting a character he'd spent years carefully building. But over time, the story's weight won him over. It gave Bashir layers he'd never had before: guilt, shame, and the struggle to earn his place among those who didn't share his secret. Siddig later said, "It was the best thing that happened to him." The twist that almost pushed him out became the one that defined him. Now let's shift from the bright-eyed dreamer to the station's backbone, Miles O'Brien. He wasn't a captain or a legend. He was a guy with a wrench, a family, and a job that never ended. The working-class heart of Star Trek. The everyman who fixed the transporter, held the line in the trenches, and still went home to tuck his daughter into bed. Fans loved him because he wasn't extraordinary. He was real. He complained, he broke down, and somehow, he always got back up. But for Colm Meaney, the reality behind that grit was exhausting. He'd already spent years on the next generation, and by the time Deep Space Nine hit its stride, the grind was wearing him down. The long hours, the recycled sets, and the constant travel between Los Angeles and his family in Ireland left him drained. In a 2003 Star Trek magazine interview, he called it a grind, long hours, same sets, little air. Eventually, he told the producers he was ready to quit. Instead, they gave him something to stay for: deeper, darker material that showed what Starfleet life cost the people who weren't in command. Episodes like Hard Time and the Siege of AR-558 let him turn O'Brien's quiet endurance into one of the show's most human performances. Meaney stayed until the very end, but later admitted, "By the end, I was ready to move on." Speaking of TNG alum, let's talk about one of Star Trek's most unforgettable characters who almost didn't make it to Deep Space Nine. When Worf arrived on Deep Space Nine in Season 4, the whole tone of the series shifted. He was the steel-spined outsider, a warrior who lived by honor in a place ruled by compromise. For years on The Next Generation, he'd been the stoic punchline, the man who got thrown across the bridge every time a console exploded. But here, he was something more. A lover, a leader, a soldier who finally got to wrestle with doubt. Fans loved seeing that evolution. For the first time, Worf wasn't a stereotype of Klingon bravado. He was a man learning how to live between worlds. But for Michael Dorn, the idea of returning to the franchise was almost unbearable. After 178 episodes of The Next Generation, he was simply burned out. In a 2012 SFX magazine interview, and later in the documentary What We Left Behind, he admitted, "I was done with Trek." Producers made their case: new stories, a deeper emotional arc, and a romance with Jadzia Dax that would show a softer side of Worf fans had never seen. Dorn agreed, reluctantly, at first. And though he stayed through the end, he later confessed, "I quit mentally at least twice." Even so, his presence helped reshape the show, turning DS9's 4th season into a declaration that Star Trek could be darker, riskier, and more human than it had ever been. Now, we've gone through a ton of fan favorites who nearly bailed on DS9, but we're just getting started. Let's talk about Odo. He was the lonely lawman, a shapeshifter who believed in order because he'd never truly known belonging. Odo kept everyone else honest, yet spent his life pretending to be something he wasn't. Under the gruff authority and dry humor was a soul aching to be seen, especially by Kira. Fans loved him because he was the show's beating heart disguised as its scowl. But for René Auberjonois, the price of that performance was almost too high. By season 6 and 7, the makeup and prosthetics that defined Odo's face were slowly breaking down his body. 5 hours in the chair, heavy adhesives, and hours under hot lights left him struggling to breathe. In a 1999 Star Trek communicator interview, and later in the 50-year mission, he admitted, "The buckets choked me. I couldn't breathe." At 60 years old, he told the producers he wasn't sure he could make it through the final year. They cut back his workload, used stand-ins when they could, and wrote scenes where Odo stayed solid instead of shifting form. Auberjonois stayed, and when Odo finally returned to the Great Link in the finale, he called it the proudest role of my career. And just as Odo found peace, another key figure lost hers. Jadzia Dax was the wise old soul in a young body, the science officer who balanced lifetimes of wisdom with a mischievous grin. She could outdrink a Klingon, outdebate a Vulcan, and still be the one person who could get Worf to loosen up. Fans adored her confidence and her warmth, the sense that she'd seen everything and still chose joy. But behind that strength, Terry Farrell was running out of steam. In a 2018 The Seventh Rule podcast and TrekMovie.com interview, she revealed that by season 7, she was exhausted. She asked the producers for a lighter schedule, saying she was burned out. Executive producer Rick Berman refused, reportedly telling her, "You're lucky to be here." Ultimately, Farrell's contract ended and she walked. Her character's death in Tears of the Prophets, struck down in a Bajoran temple, was more than a shock. "It wasn't about money," she said. "It was about respect." The cast was furious, the fans were devastated, and Deep Space Nine lost one of its emotional anchors. And her exit, in turn, created chaos for the next actor on our list, Nicole de Boer, who played Ezri Dax. Ezri had potential. You could see flashes of strength and depth waiting to break through, but she was more or less forced into the show after Terry Farrell's exit. And for that reason, Nicole de Boer was stepping into a tough situation. In a 1999 Star Trek communicator interview, she said, "I walked into a storm." Fans were still angry about Farrell's exit before they'd even met her. The producers built Ezri's story around that insecurity, a junior counselor struggling to belong in a place that wasn't quite ready for her. And in this case, art imitated life. Later, de Boer admitted, "I felt like an outsider." She stayed for one season, but the tension never fully faded. And that takes us to Jake Sisko. Jake was the show's civilian heartbeat, a dreamer who chose the pen over the phaser and reminded everyone what life looked like outside a uniform. His bond with his father grounded the series, giving the epic stories of war and faith a human pulse. Fans connected to his quiet kindness and the hope he represented. But Cirroc Lofton was growing up fast. He started Deep Space Nine at 14, and by the later seasons, the long days and endless hours were wearing him down. By season 6, he'd appeared in only 71 of 173 episodes. In What We Left Behind and the Seventh Rule podcast, he admitted, Jake was just there while the war raged. Juggling school and work, he finally stepped away, and the writers explained Jake's absence by sending him off station. I put my life first, he said later. DS9 raised me, but stepping away made me. So, which story surprised you most? And how much of this did you already know? Let me know in the comments. And before you click away, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive into the final frontier.